Hi, it's Freya. I wanted to talk today a little bit about the New Earth and what it means, where it's come from, where the idea has come from, and what implications it has in our everyday lives, and to offer a little bit of a suggestion about how we might be able to deal with the repercussions of what appears to be happening. Now, my understanding is that the New Earth is something which was particularly spoken about for a very long time by Dolores Cannon. And Dolores Cannon is she was an amazing American hypnotherapist who developed a system of past life regression. And she worked with literally thousands of clients around the world over a 50-year career. And she wrote many, many books and transcribed many of the, and actually recorded many of the conversations that she had with her clients when they were in a state of deep hypnosis. And Dolores Cannon said herself that the work that she did explored a level of consciousness which most hypnosis doesn't touch. It's a level of consciousness which a lot of mainstream hypnotherapy therapists consider to be a little bit surprising in what comes through, and they say it's an unstable state. But actually, Dolores Cannon explored it very, very consistently, and initially her work was taking individual people back to a state of regression through hypnotherapy, where they would talk about and experience past lives. And usually people had gone to her because they had an issue in this life. There was something that they just couldn't get a handle on. They couldn't understand. They had a problem in their life of recurring situations coming again and again, physical ailments, psychological issues, emotional situations. And they wanted an answer. And what Dolores Cannon was able to do was take them to a state where they could spontaneously access their experience in what they considered to be themselves in another life. Often what occurred was information about that past life which shed light on their situation in their current life, in their current consciousness, which in many ways and very often, very, very frequently, healed whatever the situation was in this life that the person was having difficulty with. Now, that was consistently found, and there are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of her clients who will testify to that fact. In her later years of doing this work, she found that people were no longer really going back to their own personal past lives in the way that we might understand them. And she found many people as well that were coming that didn't appear to have past life memories, but they did have experience of being conscious in other ways. Now, if you haven't looked into it, it's too complicated, and the information is too diverse for me to really go into here. But what they were really finding was what she found consistently, and these were people that hadn't met each other, they hadn't spoken to each other, they didn't know what she was finding with other people. And what a lot of them started talking about very consistently with the same information was this concept of a new Earth. That consciousness on the planet was shifting and transitioning. And as we were moving out of the dimensional reality that we've been born into and know as 3D or 4D if you include time reality, the concept of those three dimensions being depth, breadth, and height. So this way, this way, and this way, which makes things solid in the way that we experience them. That other dimensions were opening up, which were only going to open up to certain people initially, and that would create a split. as some people entered into the new earth and some people remained in what you might call the old earth, the one we've come to know. And I would say, in my experience, and the more people that I speak to, and I do speak to a lot of people who are having very, interesting experiences, myself included, that suggest that this is actually happening. And so Dolores Cannon called this the New Earth. And as the transition occurred, the experience of people living and moving into this new earth would mean that their reality was shifting and they were perceiving reality in a very different way, what I would call a deeper reality. It's the name of this channel, it's what it's all about. So as people began to, we may talk about awakening, spiritual awakening, conscious evolution, and people experience awakening and spiritual awakening in very, very different ways. I mean, some people believe a spiritual awakening is suddenly coming across conspiracy theories. It may be. Their consciousness has shifted. For other people, it's a full-blown experience of enlightenment. It's a sudden Gnostic realization of a deeper truth of reality. And certainly, I would say that what underpins an experience and a moving into the new reality, from my point of view, is an understanding that we are creating through our own consciousness this reality. Now, you can know that theoretically, and you can experience it in a very visceral, tangible way, and those are different levels of knowing it. And there are many people that still, the majority of people, still, over 95% of people on the planet still, they don't have any concept of that. It's not in their consciousness, and they may well also resist it. So if you happen to be one of the people who are awakening to this new earth and living in this new earth, who understand that their thoughts and emotions and their frequency affect the reality that they create around them, not just in a psychological way, but in a very, very physical way, that your thoughts are, if you like, the conductor that conducts energy to become physical reality. So once you begin to understand that, you may get that through the law of attraction. You may have come to my own work, Still Flow and the Peace Intention. You may just have picked it up from books. I believe that it's as well the basis of Eckhart Tolle's New Earth. He wrote a book called The New Earth. So once you have that knowledge, there's no going back. It's like you've stepped through a door into a new dimension. You literally have. Your experience of reality is totally and fundamentally altered. And you may oscillate between the two. And Dolores Cannon said that the two earths are not separate. The old earth and the new earth are superimposed upon each other. So if you are in the new earth, you can still see the third dimensional world, where politics and geopolitics and all of this is still playing out. But you're less personally affected by it, because you know that your own state of consciousness is being created from within you rather than from outside of you. So you tend to pay less attention to it. You may switch off from the mass media. You may spend time doing different things. You may be much more concerned about everything you consume. You may become interested in energy and frequencies and try and avoid Wi-Fi, for example, or the incoming 5G frequencies, because you understand that they have an effect on the human energy field. But one thing that can happen, I think, and I hear this more and more, is that people are very concerned that their friends and family, their loved ones, are being left behind in the old earth, in a world that they can no longer understand themselves, that they no longer inhabit, and that there is this rift occurring between people. And and there's a sense of desperation or exasperation or frustration that they can't get people who are in the old earth to understand how to make the transition into the new earth by understanding, literally, the key has been called the secret, that they are creating their reality with their thoughts and their emotions. And so you can have families in great conflict where one part is in the old earth, the other part is in the new earth, and the two appear to be literally light years apart. Now, my answer to that would be that if you want to fully transition into the new earth, and to be honest, I don't think it's really a choice. I think it's an evolutionary impulse. I think there's nothing we can do about it. It's occurring. We are consciousness. Consciousness is evolving. There's nothing that can stop it. Once it's an ongoing, never-ending occurrence of expansion and evolution. So if you are expanding into the new earth and you feel this desire to bring people with you, to get your family and your friends to understand what you understand, the one thing you have to remember is that's absolutely fine to have that conversation, and it's totally understandable. But if that conversation affects your frequency, if that conversation affects your emotional state in a negative way, then you're slipping back every time you have that conversation. That's the first thing to understand. If having that conversation is creating conflict within you or between you and your friends or your family, just let it go. Just let it go. Or do whatever you can to have that conversation if you feel compelled to do so, and retain your frequency. Don't let it frustrate you. Don't let it anger you. Don't let it worry you. Everything is unfolding exactly as it's meant to unfold. This is an evolutionary process. You're experiencing it as an individual, and that can be hard sometimes, but it is a collective experience of consciousness itself, not just of humanity, of consciousness itself. Consciousness is evolving, and it is being experienced through you. And I think the other thing to realize is, if you look at Ken Wilber's work, very clever work with spiral dynamics, he sets out very useful ways of understanding consciousness and states of consciousness. And one thing that he was very clear about is that it's very, very difficult, almost impossible, for people that are at a different state of consciousness to understand people that are at a more expanded state of consciousness. It's a little bit like a musician that is working at concert level, a concert pianist, for example, trying to explain the nuance of playing at that level to somebody who's just beginning. And that's not to say that there is anything better about either of those states. They are just different. One has different information. It's all about information. Being in the new earth is about experiencing and responding to information in a different way. That really is the crux of it. It's that we've got keys now which have been around forever. They've arisen in consciousness again very recently, and a large number of people now are in a different state of consciousness because of that. They have information that allows them to live their lives differently, more joyfully, more successfully, with more financial stability and freedom. They're stepping out of being, often they're moving out of doing salaried jobs and becoming entrepreneurs because they don't see the need. They don't have a sense of anxiety about working in those old patterns. So lots and lots of changes in the new earth compared to the old earth. But it doesn't matter where you are. And some days, to be honest, you're in the new earth, and other days you're back in the old earth. Thinking that because they're superimposed on each other, 1 minute you're absolutely in alignment totally conscious of the fact that you're creating your reality. You're able to rise above everything that seems to be trying to bring you down around you. And as you do that, you go back into your heart space and everything just comes into alignment externally as well. People just start to be happier around you. They do things for you. Things come to you. You recognize the method. Then something happens and bang, you're back in complaining about it, whinging about it, being scared of it, whatever. You're back in the old earth. So there's very few people, I'd say, that are consistently in the new earth at the moment. We're making forays, little adventures into the new earth, and then coming back to our old, if you like, place of safety. Maybe uncomfortable, but it's our old place of safety, is the old earth, where we're just hapless victims of circumstance. Which in the new earth, of course, we're not. In the new earth, we are fully conscious of the fact that we are responsible for our reality, and that for many people is a huge transition, a transition that's way too beyond where they're at the moment, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with your family or your friends not getting where you're at, or being concerned about you, or thinking that you've gone slightly insane. We are behaving, living differently, and people respond to that change, often with fear, often with resistance, often with anger. So that's fine. That's absolutely fine. The answer, I would say, would be to just stay in your own frequency, to recognize that this occurrence is happening and you are not alone in what's going on. You are certainly not alone in what's going on. There is big changes occurring, and they're occurring extremely quickly. And this is to do with the relativity of time. That's for another video when I'll talk about levels of consciousness, and I want to talk a little bit about Zell Lungold's fascinating theory about the Mayan pyramids and the Mayan long count calendar measuring the evolution of consciousness rather than time as we've come to know it. So that's another thing. But anyway, I just really wanted to say, it's happening. Dolores Cannon had this same message from thousands of people that had no reason to speak as one in their state of altered consciousness. Again, if you've seen my video about channeled information, where I mentioned Dolores Cannon's work along with Abraham Hicks and Seth, it does appear that information is coming to us through a larger aspect of our own consciousness that's kind of seeping through in different ways to us now, that is assisting the evolution of consciousness. And it's extremely fascinating. I'd include the crop formations as part of that information that's coming through. To me, it's not coming from extraterrestrials. It's coming from another dimension of our own consciousness. There is one consciousness. Our experience is deliberately limited at this time in 3 dimensions and is expanding as we move into the new earth. So we're experiencing new levels of consciousness and new dimensions, which is why everything gets more magical and more exciting and more interesting and more fascinating, and synchronicity is a huge part of it. And that for me is the deeper reality that I'm exploring and sharing with you today. So that's kind of it. That's kind of what I got to say about the new earth. It's happening. I'm absolutely certain about that. Don't worry about it. Don't try and fix it. Don't try and force people to understand stuff they're not ready for. Just stay in your own vibration. If you're experiencing that, then just go with the magic of it. Understand that you're creating your reality. Understand that your frequency matters, that your emotional state is vital to what you're creating. And don't get caught in a loop of trying to tell other people how they should be, and or even to try and explain to them how you are or how you experience things, except that everybody here is different. Everybody's at a different stage in their evolution, and there's nothing wrong. Nothing at all is wrong. Everything's okay. So just stay with that. And if you like these videos, I'm just starting doing this now, so if you like this video, please press the like button, and do subscribe, because I'm going to be talking about a lot more aspects of deeper reality and how we can experience them, and the issues that might arise, and pointing people towards information that I think is really interesting in as our consciousness evolves. So have a wonderful day, and I'll speak to you soon.